Quite often it's the question of where are you from that is always the big one. And sometimes I think of just cutting straight to the chase and saying my ethnic background, and other times I feel an urge to say Hotham Hill. And I think where are you from is a very different question to what's your background or your nationality. I identify as a Eurasian person. I'm a person of European ancestry and Asian ancestry. And I do get comments like I'm pretty for an Asian, or like I'm quite handsome for an Asian person. What does that mean? Like, what is the average handsomeness of an Asian person? Am I handsome for a European person? That's the question. Or exotic is a word that gets used a lot. I think that's very interesting. When I think of exotic, I think of ingredients and things that you can buy in a Woolworths on a shelf that have lots of colour, not really like a person. I think I was around sort of, like not exactly 18, but around that sort of age when I sort of realised that in a way it felt like, when I got certain compliments or microaggressions like that, it was almost like I was being paraded, like an exhibit. And I just found that very, very uncomfortable, and I think that extends to other elements of people's experience as well. And I know people can be well-meaning, but that doesn't take away from how uncomfortable it is.
I understand it's well-intentioned, but it's just so like the fact that you call me exotic is just singling me out in a way, you know? And it's the same, like I've had guys message me and be like, oh, I've never been into Asians before, but like I'm into you. And I'm like, okay, and like leave, just go. Or one guy literally was like, oh, he's like, I can't stop thinking about you. I search up like Asian porn now. And I was like, don't fetishize me, don't. And I had explained how he was fetishizing me. And he just goes, no, I'm not. I'm just only into Asian girls sexually now. And I was like, how do you think you're getting yourself out of this? And it's like, just listen, just listen to me talk, and you don't even have to say you're sorry, but don't tell me I'm wrong for feeling the way I feel.
I remember like sometimes I got vilified on like the football field and stuff like that for people who mistook me for being, I don't know, African American, for instance, and it's not a culture that I'm part of. The main microaggressions that you'd always get as a mixed race person is that from a white standpoint, I'm very coloured, but from a coloured standpoint, I'm very white, and you're always caught in limbo somewhere in the middle between the two. Whereas I'm more so white in the way that I present myself. It's related more to the upbringing that I've had, but I'll always be seen as a person of colour. The only time it ever becomes a problem is if people kind of see me like this and expect me to act or sound a particular way. And even like as a little kid, I would be pulled over by the cops a fair bit. Like even when I was like too young to drive and I was riding a bicycle, for instance, I would get stopped. Anytime I was with the family, it was nothing but these random breath tests that they always set up for themselves. But even now, I've been pulled over like 3 times in the past 3 weeks. And one of them was literally outside the front of my house. The first time it fully occurred to me when I'd been pulled over that it seemed a bit suspicious to me. I was outside my girlfriend's gym, sitting in the car eating a burger, and one of those public order response police vehicles, the black ones, drove past me, did a U-turn, and as I was eating my food, the police officer in the car made direct eye contact with me, and then and there he put his lights on and then did another U-turn to stop behind me and then asked me if the car I was driving was in fact mine and not stolen.
I've had people assume my religion and then act like they know more about my religion than I do, even though I'm not part of that religion. A lot of the time, I think a lot of it was in primary school, because I went to a predominantly white primary school, and I would often feel very like not Australian, very sort of isolated, or like I couldn't share sort of my home life with my peers because they would just sort of laugh And of course they were like kids as well, so they don't understand. Or like I would feel embarrassed about just my culture, or like, because I feel like South Indian, like because I'm Sri Lankan, like Sri Lankan or Indian culture is sort of portrayed as sort of funny or dumb, as opposed to something like, you know, European culture, which is seen as like really refined.
Those comments generally make me feel like I don't belong. I think especially growing up as a migrant, you feel like you don't belong in your, if those comments sometimes make me feel like, oh, maybe I just belong back in like Sri Lanka, but then when I go back to Sri Lanka, I don't really belong there either. So it is very isolating. By the time I turned sort of 19 or 20 even, that I was like fully okay with just like embracing my culture, or not feeling like it makes me other, or it's not something to be embarrassed about. But I think certain comments, like people like mispronouncing, like not even bothering to try pronounce my name, or just like making weird comments about my background. It was when I was 16 and I was doing work experience with a barrister, and he was wonderful, he was lovely, but we were in the magistrate's court and we were just like, there weren't many people there, I was just shadowing him, and I was just sitting at the back, and the magistrate thought that I was the defendant's daughter, and he said it in his, like when he was giving his decision, he was like, oh, I can see that your daughter is here today, and I wasn't the defendant's daughter, it was just because the defendant was brown and I was also brown, and that made me feel very awkward. But I think it's sort of always been implied from a young age that I'm not, like I would have to work harder to be attractive to someone else just because I'm not white. Like I would just feel that in, like even in like primary school, when obviously dating isn't even real, but they do. It's just like, oh, if I was white, like people would like me more. And like if I'm pretty, it's because I'm pretty for a Sri Lankan, not because I'm just pretty.